Welcome to the 902 Podcast, the official podcast of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm Captain Vik, and I want to thank you for listening. This podcast will give you an inside look at LSO with topics and guests to discuss public safety issues impacting Lancaster County. Be sure to subscribe for highlights on news, cases, and the people working for you at LSO. You can also follow us across social media at LSO Nebraska on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Welcome to the 902 Podcast. We're in studio today. Sheriff Wagner as always, but we also have a guest host. Sara Sump is joining the show today in place of Chief Deputy Houchin. Thanks for being here, Sara.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Much nicer personality.
Why?
Thanks, boss.
Well, and we're adding to the group Josh Planos from the Better Business Bureau. Josh, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. We wanted to talk today about scams and consumer protection. And before we do that, though, we want to give our listeners a little bit of background on you and where you came from. So, how did you get to where you're at today, Josh?
Well, like many in the state, I went to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and then afterward, I've essentially sampled the fare. I have moved to work for a news station. I have worked in fundraising. I've worked for a public school district, and now I'm very happily at the Better Business Bureau. So it's been a long, winding road, but communication's been a big part of all of those roles. And frankly, I think what I'm doing right now is probably the most meaningful.
Awesome. Well, we're certainly happy to have you here. And was there anything in particular about the Better Business Bureau and consumer protection that caught your interest when you were looking at different careers?
Yeah. So I have a very distinct memory of a grandparent going through a scam. And I think there are so many on-ramps to the Better Business Bureau, many of which involve business support, but mine was really consumer protection driven. I had a grandparent lose a significant amount of money to a scam, shared that experience with us, walked through her experience reporting that to the Better Business Bureau. And at that time, I felt like, wow, there's probably a lot to helping someone like her through that process. And conveniently, I ended up there.
Yeah, and I know a lot of us in law enforcement have probably a similar experience, whether we were a victim of crime or knew someone that was a victim of crime. It's kind of a motivator to get some of us into public service. So it's cool that you share that lived experience and are giving back a little bit. So since you are with the Better Business Bureau, what is your actual position there, and what do you do for the Better Business Bureau now?
So my position is Vice President of Communications and Public Relations. The Better Business Bureau that I work for, there are more than 90 across all of North America, but the one that I work for serves 5 states. And so that keeps us plenty busy with the various communities. Consumer protection is a very large part of that position, whether it's our ScamTracker tool or developing programming for communities, or we have scholarship initiatives. So there's really there's a lot to it, but business support is typically the primary driver for us.
So when I think of the Better Business Bureau, the first thing that comes to my mind is like the seal of approval.
Yes, like the ratings, like they have an A+ or a F. Yes.
We do. The seal of approval is a big stamp of credibility for a lot of folks. We are very, very proud of it. It's gone through a lot of different iterations. So what it looks like today did not look like in the 1980s, and that's a good thing.
So when did it start, the Better Business Bureau as an organization?
So the Better Business Bureau has been around since 1912.
Oh.
And it really was it was developed by a man who was actually credited with creating the 10 Commandments of advertising. And so this person essentially built the BBB to provide guardrails for the advertising industry, which at the time had folks saying that smoking cigarettes might have some healthy benefits, or drinking soda might help children develop. So there was really a Wild West as it pertained to advertising.
Say whatever you want, and no consequences.
And so in the however many decades since, it's been more than a century. We've gone through iterations. We've added programming. It's nothing like it was then, but we do still provide actually advertising guidelines nationwide.
So do people have to go through like a process? How do they get that seal?
Yeah, so it depends on the industry, but you have to have demonstrated a certain amount of time in business. And there are 8 what we call standards of trust, which on a human level, I think we can all mostly get behind. They involve transparent business practices, responding to patterns of complaints, advertising honestly, things like that. So they would go through the process of applying. We are a membership organization, so there is a dues component. We're not for profit. So we are duty bound to serve our membership, but a lot of what I do is serving the community.
So what's the overall mission then of the Better Business Bureau as we know it today?
So it's lofty. It's a lofty goal,
Okay.
but our mission is to be the leader in advancing marketplace trust.
Okay.
We feel like there are a lot of different pillars to trust in our communities, but we do what we can to support that mission every day.
Well, and that's a shared mission. Building public trust is part of our mission statement. It's part of the reason that we're doing this show, to try and give more transparency and just more information to the public about how we do what we do. So it's great that we get to talk to you today about kind of some things that we get to do together. So we'll dig into, the scams and consumer protection piece of this, but what are the services that the Better Business Bureau offers to people in your region?
So I would say that for some, the Better Business Bureau is known as the fun police for businesses. So if a business is acting in a certain manner and you want to file a complaint, the Better Business Bureau for a certain pocket is where you would go to do that.
Okay.
We'd like to think that even though we do provide mediation and arbitration services, that we do provide a lot more. One of our most well-known services is we have a database, bbb.org. It involves millions of business profiles where folks can do some research on companies and charities. They can research those customer reviews and complaints and get quotes for their service. So if you're in the market for a new home and you want to find a home builder but not sure which one, you can do that. If you want to get a sense for whether a tax preparer will be credible, you can look them up on bbb.org and it'll help in that process. But we do also provide a lot of community programming, which is a big part of what I do.
Yeah.
So we provide scholarships to graduating high school seniors. We do cybersecurity events, shred events, online review, solicitation events. It really just kind of depends on the month.
Sheriff, have we ever been accused of being the fun police? I mean, we are fun.
We're fun. Yeah.
And we are police. I don't know if anybody's ever thrown that label on us.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, we maybe have some work to do. So, okay. Let's move on a little bit to what we want to talk about today, which is just the scams and consumer protection side of this. And Sheriff, we've got a partnership with the Better Business Bureau to help with some public awareness stuff now. But we've had programs prior to this, and Triad is the one that comes to mind most recently.
Triad started in the 90s, in the late 90s. It was an initiative from the National Sheriff's Association that paired seniors and law enforcement together to combat frauds and scams. And back then, a lot of the scams were the Nigerian letters that people received in the mail, and then
Physical letters,
and then telephone solicitation that was fraudulent or trying to scam people out of money or whatever. And so, Triad really here anyway really was a partnership. BBB was involved. Lincoln Area Agency on Aging was involved. A number of the banks were involved to kind of help us with that aspect of it. NBC Bank at the time had a 55 Alive newsletter, and we would submit articles for that. So it was really trying to educate people on what to look for and how to detect a fraudulent sort of solicitation, either a proposed nonprofit soliciting for funds, or somebody just calling a cold call that would try to solicit funds. And then that evolved into the grandparent scam, where people would get a call and the caller would say your grandson has been arrested in Mexico for drunk driving and needs money for bail, those kinds of things. And so it really evolved into trying to educate people on what to look for those scams and frauds.
and it's a awareness is kind of the biggest tool that we have, because if we can prevent one of these from happening in the first place, it saves a lot of time and stress and money for a lot of these people. But that's a big part of the reason that we're doing this and that we're partnering with the Better Business Bureau is to push that awareness that's out there. But I mean, Sara, you and I we deal with this almost on a weekly basis. It seems like either responding to law enforcement impersonation scams is a big one.
It is.
That we'll get, and our staff up front that are answering our phone will just all of a sudden get inundated with calls from people that are probably actually doing the right thing, trying to verify, hey, are you do I have a warrant?
Yes.
Do I have fines?
Did I miss jury duty?
Did I miss jury duty is another big one. And 98% of the people, maybe even 99, do the right thing and call and verify. And we encourage them to do that if they have a question. But the trick on these is that they've only got to find one person to do it. And that's what keeps these things going. So we really want to get the information out there.
There was for a long time, there were, when people had caller ID on their home phones, was the Puerto Rican area code was like, I'm going to say 572. That's probably wrong, but that was the trigger. If you got a call from that area code, it was probably a scam, because I think it was a Puerto Rican originated scam, and they did a litany of those kinds of
originating.
Origination calls to try to scam people out of funds.
Well, unfortunately, I think technology has just allowed these scams to just become so much more sophisticated. Whereas before it was a physical letter in the mail, and then the telephone, and then the caller ID, and I mean, now you can spoof somebody's phone number, and we've had cases where people will find your name or my name on our website and will call and actually impersonate us, like you said, for missing jury duty, or having a warrant or some fines. And then, they'll, in some cases, they've actually given a number to call back, which I've called.
Yes.
And they'll say, well, this is Sheriff Wagner's secretary. Let me transfer you to him. And only to get transferred to somebody that doesn't sound anything like you.
Yeah.
But tries to badger you into sending them money via Green Dot prepaid cards and things like that, so that it's not traceable.
Right.
I don't, Sara, you do our budget and finance, but we've never accepted Green Dot cards for anything.
We do not accept Green Dot cards. No gift cards. No Green Dot cards. No. Cash, check.
Yeah, and my big thing that we've always tried to tell people is that we are very happy to provide front door service if we really need to find you. Mm-hmm. And
if Terry Wagner is knocking on your door,
right? And so I think the thing that we'll talk through some of these schemes, but they always try to leverage that fear factor, and that's a big human motivator to. A lot of this stuff is just a hassle of, I don't want to deal with, if I'm going to have a fine for jury duty or it's going to impact work or something like that. But, people get caught up in the moment. They're thinking about 100 different things, and all of a sudden they've got somebody on the phone that says, if you don't give me money right now, you're going to go to jail.
Yeah, typically it's a combination of variables where you wouldn't, in a vacuum, provide a Green Dot card for any sort of service.
It sounds crazy when you're thinking about it, but
if you're faced with the seeming reality that you're going to be arrested if you don't provide what is requested, it becomes a very easy calculus for a lot of folks who, again, are probably not thinking clearly in the moment. Just kind of this assumption that you're always going to get called when you have your tips of 10 things to avoid scams document right next to you, and you've got a level head, and nothing is going on in your life that might influence your decision. Mm-hmm. The reality is they're calling when you least expect it, and those variables add up over time, and suddenly you're making decisions you otherwise wouldn't.
The Better Business Bureau, we'll talk about the ScamTracker in a little bit, but you guys kind of collate tips and collect those. What are some of the things that the Better Business Bureau was seeing recently, like around the holidays and some of the retail scams?
So we've seen a lot of folks, unfortunately, lose money to products that are too good to be true, opportunities that can be delivered to you in, a matter of hours if you've pushed, holiday shopping to that degree. We've seen a lot regarding fake invoices. It's budget season for a lot of businesses. So we've seen a lot of folks, unfortunately, being told that they owe, a back payment on a certain service, whether it's a vendor or, IT support, things that are typically outsourced. So we've seen that. We see a lot in the realm of romance in and around the holidays, especially in the lead up to Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there is a seasonality to scams, but more often than not, the tactics are the same regardless of what the scam is actually being masked with.
Yeah, and Sarah, we just had, we won't say any names on the show, but we just had a romance scam with a financial loss reported to the office.
We did, yes.
Within the last week.
It's happening, folks.
And unfortunately, what these criminals are doing is preying on sometimes lonely people. The way that it worked in this case, and it worked in a lot of other cases, is apparently, I'm told in 2024 now, is you meet people on the internet. Apparently, you can't just go to a bar anymore. Apparently, but when you meet people on the internet and some sort of relationship, happens, that's kind of the hook. And then there's kind of promises of getting together and meeting, but I'm having a hard time getting a flight, and can you float me a couple $100 for this? And then the $100 here turns into $500 there because, well, then this other thing, got in the way, and gosh, I'd really love to fly across the country and meet you, but I've got to take care of this and that. And before you know it, you've spent $1,000 on somebody that A, you've never even met, and B, if you're in your right frame of mind, doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the sad reality that folks find themselves in when they've got that financial loss. And when we just had one for,
it was like the general of the Syrian army does not need you to send them money.
Right.
Like, it's not happening.
Right. And again, from the outside looking in, you want to just kind of be like, come on, think. But sometimes people just aren't. They're, like you said, they don't have the top 10 tips right in front of them when they're thinking about stuff. And criminals are using your mind against you to push the buttons that they know that you're more likely to respond to. So it's too bad, but. Hey, I'm Captain John Vik with the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. When it comes to your career, don't settle for good enough. Don't settle for ordinary. We won't either. Be different, be better, be exceptional. Start your future today at joinlso.com. Travel scams are another one, Josh, that we've talked about in the past. What do you see with those?
Everyone loves a vacation. I think right now there's a lot of families that are planning whatever that summer excursion is going to look like.
Why the heck would you want to get out of Lincoln, Nebraska right now?
That's beautiful. Hey, we are above negative today. I mean, it's like right? 8 degrees outside. It's
23.
23. That is a heat wave. I don't know why you'd want to leave.
So somebody gets a text message or whatever about a 3-day cruise to the Bahamas?
It sounds nice to me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, right, a lot of folks are getting targeted on social media. These are really sophisticated scams. I don't certainly want to belittle the tactics that are being used. In some cases, they are geo-targeting folks who have a certain household income, have a certain, they know that there are children in the home. Very easy to use. Very fine line between marketing someone and targeting them with very, very real tactics that unfortunately get them to fork over their wallet.
Yeah.
But in a lot of cases, it's either listing a property that is not actually an Airbnb as a rental, or it's providing a cut rate discount for an opportunity that doesn't exist. And you'd be surprised at the amount of damage you can do with a fake barcode. Most barcodes look very similar.
Sure.
So if you provide that for a digital transaction, I think for a lot of folks, that transaction's over and done with, and I'm off to the Bahamas.
What about tax preparation stuff? We're coming up on tax season too. What do people need to be aware of with tax prep scams?
Well, if you were to design a scam, if the goal of every scam is to get personal and payment information from someone, and you were to design a scam, it would look a lot like tax preparation.
Yeah.
Right. With the sheer volume of information that you're collecting on somebody.
Yeah, you got to turn over, your social security number and all of your finances and some routing numbers for your banks. And
in a lot of cases, we'd see either folks, using the front of a reputable business.
Yeah.
So this is my address. I look up the address. The address is actually a tax preparer. Unfortunately, this is not an HTTPS website. So, something as simple as we've merely copied the entire facade of the company.
Yeah.
We're using it to collect all this payment information. Everything from that to somebody who is, pretending to offer that discount you won't be able to get anywhere else. That for $15.99, we'll file your taxes for you.
Yep.
Very, very few services that would be able to do that.
Yeah.
So we do see kind of everything in between. We see a lot of back tax related scams, folks being called by someone pretending to be from the IRS. They've spoofed the caller ID. It says Washington, D.C. It says Internal Revenue Service right there. Unfortunately, we have run into an issue and you owe $5,000. And that was actually something that I experienced when I worked for a TV station. Was I received a phone call. And presumably I had all of the information I could possibly need to protect myself from this experience. And even though I ultimately hung up the phone, I came about as close as you can to providing this information to a complete stranger.
Sure. So that can happen to any of us sitting in this room. And when we talk about all these scams, it makes you want to just throw your hands up in the air and say, well, how the heck am I supposed to know the difference between, because all of these things could be legitimate. People do miss jury duty. And people do.
But you get those triggers that if payments demanded via a green dot card, and we've seen those scams where some seniors, myself included, I've never bought a green dot card in my life, but they will walk you through the process.
Yep.
They'll walk you through the Walgreens or CVS to buy the green dot. Give them the number, and that money is gone.
While you're on the phone. Yeah. So what are some things? That one's a pretty easy example to anybody that's asked for a green dot card. That should be clue number one. Unless you're expecting a gift card in your birthday, for your birthday or something. But what are some other things that people can do? Practical steps that people can do to protect themselves and know if they've got a legitimate transaction versus maybe one that's not so wise.
Well, I think to point to the green dot example is using secure and traceable transactions. The reason those non-traditional payment methods are so often solicited is because they're irrevocable. So once that money is spent, it's really never coming back. That's why cryptocurrency is such a gold mine for a scammer, because there's really no means of ever connecting that person who worked very hard from that money with the money that's been spent.
Right.
Resisting the urge to act immediately, such that you're not making a decision with somebody on the phone who's coaching you through that process of going to Hy-Vee, going to the grocery store to purchase, prepaid gift cards, and also providing yourself the oxygen necessary to make the most informed decision for yourself and your family.
Right.
And then some basic guardrails that just like slow down, use your seatbelt, are saving lives. Using extreme caution when dealing with anyone that you've met online. If you can remember, even after you've been sold, a whole bill of goods that may or may not be authentic, that this person you've never met is a complete stranger, I think typically you'll at least give yourself the grace necessary to make an informed decision.
One of the things that's always popped into my head, and I try to tell people too, is who initiated
exactly
that communication. And it's one thing if I'm going to shop for a cruise, right? I'm going to look up a company and shop around and I'm going to initiate that communication. But if someone else is calling me, hopefully that's another clue in my mind that well, hang on a second, maybe maybe instead of answering the phone call from them, I should say, you know what, I'm going to call you back, and I'm going to look up your phone number at a reputable phone number that I know is your number, not just some random number that you give me. Is another way to cross-check that, because that's why we tell people, if you ever have a question, whether you're talking to a Lancaster County deputy sheriff, call 441-6500, and we'll verify if the reason that we're needing to get in touch with you is legitimate, because that's our phone number. Somebody can make their phone number look like ours, but they can't dial that number and end up somewhere else. And so that's another, just, I think, quick way to verify, especially if you're not the one initiating.
That used to be, especially with when phone scams, traditional landline scams were big. If you did initiate the call, use caution, because there's you have no way of knowing who you're talking with. They can say they're anybody. And the same thing's true with internet scams now. And that's become so much more prevalent. Whereas, we're getting emails from somebody that purports to be the service desk at some Google or one of those places, and that you need to provide information. And, once you give them your computer, I've got all my financial data on my computer, and many people do because they do bill pay through their computers and so on.
Yep.
And once you give somebody access to your computer, it's an open book.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just happened to my mom actually recently. It popped up and said our virus protection was gone. And so then she actually called the number, and the person was walking her through how to sign up for it again. And luckily she stopped and thought, wait a minute, this doesn't quite seem right, and hung up the phone. But I'm like, Mom, you can't just believe everything that pops up on your computer, because again, they came to you, and then look to see if it's at HTTPS. Is it a secure website? You got to check it. So it happens, and it's quick.
We go through training here, within the county city information services network about how to recognize a scam or a website that's not legitimate, and rolling your mouse over the address will give you the true address of where it's going, and it's not just whatever business it says it is. It'll give you more information. So but a lot of people that are very savvy, they'll ask for your social security number in segments. So they'll give you the last 4 digits, which are common in a lot of transactions, where they ask you the last 4 digits of your social security number. And then a little bit later in the conversation, well, what's the first 3 digits? And then a little bit later, what's the middle 2 digits? And before you know it, this person has given their entire social security number to the caller without really recognizing that they had done that.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point with the phishing emails, and that's big business for a lot of these scammers and ransomware people that they'll try to get access to what is otherwise a very secure computer network at a lot of these government organizations or just private businesses and corporations.
Hospitals, we've seen it on all kinds of
yeah,
systems.
And they'll lock up your data, including very sensitive patient records and things like that, and then demand sometimes millions of dollars to get the encryption codes to unlock it. So it's a problem.
There's almost an assumption that we're operating with a safety net anytime we're on our email, right? One click couldn't possibly result in me losing millions of dollars. One click couldn't possibly result in my accounts being compromised. The reality is it really does take a single click for some of these more sophisticated scam gangs, essentially, to access everything on the device, everything stored within the device, which for many of us is bank account information, is sensitive information, is the opportunity for a larger payout for them.
Sure.
Wow. One click, one tap can totally change your whole world.
Oh, yeah.
You don't think of it like that, but when you just said that, I was like, wow. Yeah, I just tap accept on my phone and away you go.
Well, and sadly, we're talking about a lot of more, adult scams that target adults for financial means, but we've run into a lot of cases where kids have been targeted, and sometimes people don't understand that the human trafficking stuff isn't getting picked up and smuggled into a van, like you picture on TV. A lot of times what it is, it's this online communication stuff where, again, that relationship develops online, a lot of times, unfortunately, these kids get talked into maybe sending some compromising photos of themselves or something like that, and then someone turns it around on them that if you don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to release all these pictures to your family and friends. And then, some of these kids that would otherwise know better, they're under a whole lot of pressure where they can get shamed into giving money or really whatever it takes to make that go away. And so that's just another reason that we're trying to get that awareness out there to help people protect themselves, because I think self-protection is really the best way to get this started.
All of us have different leverage points. Scammers are incredibly adept at figuring out whether you have a family, what's important to you. Typically, what's important to one person might also be important to a dozen others.
Yep.
And it's never been easier to scale an operation as it is today. You can call 500 people with a single service. You don't even need to be on the line anymore. It used to be, half a century ago, you had to be in the same room as someone to take their money, and now you can be in a call center and halfway around the world.
Yeah.
If you want a challenging career, a career where you can make a difference in your life, your family's life, and the lives of those in your community, come and join the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. To learn more or to apply, visit us online at www.joinlso.com.
Well, the fortunate thing is that there are some things that we can do about it. And, as far as the law enforcement side, we'll kind of put this in two tracks. And that's why this partnership makes sense to us, because we've got a broad variety of scams and things that we're up against. There are some things that law enforcement can do, but there are some things that law enforcement can't do. And, Sheriff, we're kind of limited to taking action aside from some of these proactive awareness campaigns. Right. We kind of have to wait, unfortunately, until there's a victim.
That's correct.
And that victim usually means some sort of financial loss or maybe exploitation of a vulnerable adult, but something that meets the criminal code in the state of Nebraska is what we're leaning on. So, but Josh, the Better Business Bureau has something that even if someone has not suffered a financial loss, or maybe they don't even meet the criteria of a vulnerable adult, for example, what can they do with you and your organization?
So we would encourage them to report it. We have a process by which, if you go to bbb.org/ScamTracker, which is where you can access this free publicly available tool, and report an experience that's mostly a complaint. So it's not a scam. We will pick up the phone and call you, have that conversation. We will direct that complaint to the company in question. If it is verified to be a scam, if there was an interaction that took place, we will report it on our website. We feel like this is different than other platforms because it's really geared toward the protection of consumers, where there's not a threshold that needs to be met. You don't need to have lost $10,000 for your story to be able to impact somebody else. But we do want to make sure that it is actually a scam before we allow it to appear publicly on our website. So I do think that even if it's just a single hurdle to clear, is important for folks to know when they come to our site that they are actually looking at real scam reports experienced by those in their community. So it's a good way you can drill down by zip code, by scam type. We try to bucket them into like type categories. Or you can look into, the date of reporting. But all of this collectively, I think, is a useful tool for folks to feel like they can, if they so choose, report anonymously and impact maybe their neighbor.
But the nice thing is, even if I don't have something to report yet, but I'm just concerned if this person that I'm talking to is legitimate, you can go on there and search, and you can see, oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of people that have reported the same thing that I've been called about. And so I'm not losing it. I'm on the right track here, and hopefully, do some of their own research and use your website as a resource to better protect themselves and their family.
There is a very unfortunate Powerball winner in Wisconsin whose name is consistently used to prop up an illegal scam that is meant to provide something of a payout to folks merely for picking up the phone. However, if you're doing your due diligence, you Google, the name of this person, you see that they did actually win the Powerball and you stop your search there, maybe you're 5% more likely to send over that money.
Right.
However, if you go down to the next search result and you see this name has been reported time and time again on the BBB, maybe it stops that conversation from continuing.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's bbb.org/ScamTracker is where you can find that information. And I think it's mobile friendly on a mobile device, or you can use it on your home computer.
Yes. We do not have a mobile app, but it is mobile friendly. And I do want to reiterate that the anonymity piece is very important to us. We take it incredibly seriously. I don't want folks to feel like to report an experience like this, a TV crew is going to show up and attempt to immediately document your experience.
Yeah.
This is very sensitive information, and folks deal with it in different ways.
Sure.
And we want to be respectful of that. So there is a very simple checkbox where you are kept anonymous if you so choose, but your experience can still protect somebody else. And so we would encourage folks to come forward with that information, even if they feel like maybe it didn't lose enough money to justify a front page headline.
And some people are embarrassed, frankly. I mean, when they realize they've been scammed, they're embarrassed that they got taken in.
Yep.
They're worried that it may provide ammunition for other family members to take over their finances because you can't control your own finances. So there's some other motivators for people not to report scams. And so the anonymity is really a good thing.
So just managing expectations for folks, and people are obviously going to make their own choices, and we just want them to make informed choices on what they choose to do if they have been a victim of this scam. So kind of two tracks. If you've been a victim of a scam and you've got a financial loss or there's some sort of criminal law that's been violated, we certainly want to encourage people to report that to us, because we do have ways that we can track some of these things, at least to a certain extent, and hopefully, and in some cases, maybe stop someone from losing their money or get part of that money back. We have resources to be able to do that, but we can only do that if people report them to us. Now, if someone does report a crime to us, that is one thing that's different between law enforcement and the Better Business Bureau. We do have to have people's information and know who they are and some facts and circumstances about what took place to be able to act on that. So,
and our records are public record.
Yes.
That's the other issue.
To some extent.
Some of our records or some of our documents that we generate are a public record, and we can't stop that.
Yeah, at least the incident report and kind of the nature of what's happened. So just kind of informed decision making that manage your expectations, that is kind of the way that we have to work it as a law enforcement investigation. However, someone may choose, for whatever motivator, that they do want to report it and make people aware of it. But if they want to go the anonymous route, the Better Business Bureau has a way to empower them to do that through the ScamTracker.
We do. And we are more than happy to pass along that information to once we have a conversation with the person, to pass that information along to the impacted law enforcement agency if it does involve a criminal complaint.
Yeah.
The biggest hurdle to me, outside of the sentiment that folks feel like their story doesn't matter or it's not going to be able to protect everybody, is how confusing the process of reporting has become for folks. It's so cumbersome, and all too often we hear from folks who feel like, they reported at one place, but maybe that wasn't the place that it was supposed to be delivered. Mm-hmm. We really do treat our organization like a one-stop shop for these reports, because the last thing we want is to get in the way of your experience being able to protect somebody else.
Yeah.
There's not a threshold that needs to be met to appear on our site, provided that it did involve an actual scam.
Awesome. We're going to continue to do some PSAs on social media. I think we're actually going to maybe film some of those today. So that's part of our partnership to try and get that out. We at the Sheriff's Office also offer, we go out and do a lot of talks out in public to various businesses and organizations. And if your organization or business would like to have a representative from the Sheriff's Office.
Civic clubs.
Yep, civic clubs, all those sorts of things. Feel free to send us an email, lso@lancaster.ne.gov. And we're happy to come out and visit with you or your organization to provide some of these tips in person. But the Better Business Bureau also offers some of those resources and programming too, Josh?
We do. If you email communications at bbbinc.org, someone will be in touch with you. Would be happy to support you in the ways that we can. Certainly can't make it out to every community event, but we do our best to serve the communities that we're entrusted with.
Awesome.
And then you guys have social media too. Is that where you'd put out like your shred days and that type of stuff? Is that the best way to get that information?
It is at BBB Midwest Plains. That's kind of our shorthand for our regional bureau is where you can find some of that information. And then our URL is bbbinc.org.
Outstanding. Sheriff, any closing thoughts today on the scam front?
You know, it just reminds me, 25 years ago, we had a woman who was scammed out of about $50,000, and it was we've got X million of dollars in this foreign country, but we need somebody to receive it. And, it was one of those iterations of the Nigerian scam, and she had sent them about $50,000. Husband was an over-road truck driver, and of course, her name was public then when she reported it, and she was so mad at me for getting that information to the media. Mm-hmm. And our goal was to prevent somebody else from being scammed. But she just made sure that when she won whatever, maybe it was Canadian lottery, when she won it, she wanted to make sure I was going to put out a retraction that she was scammed, because she was convinced it was legitimate even after we told her it was not. So, it's difficult sometimes, and people don't want to admit they're being scammed, or they just believe it wholeheartedly and won't accept otherwise.
I think it just goes back to that age-old, if it's too good to be true.
It probably is.
Yeah. All right.
And trust your gut.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is all the time that we have for the 902 podcast today. We want to thank everybody for listening in. Be sure to follow us on social media at LSO Nebraska. Also send us an email, lso@lancaster.ne.gov. If you're interested in career opportunities at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, be sure to check out joinlso.com. Hope to catch you on a future episode anywhere you enjoy listening to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, everywhere out there on the interwebs. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.